Right then, last game of the season, at least in the Premier League, is done and dusted. And United laboured with a rotated side to a victory in the end. And I had to watch it on a train. I was down doing a little bit of work at Wembley for the Stockport game, so I had to try and catch the game on the train, which was a challenge in itself. And I've just got home now. Hence why I'm uploading this so late. My first thoughts, and for those that follow me on Twitter, you might have even seen me asking it, has anybody here changed the manager's opinion ahead of this game next week with Manchester City in the FA Cup final to stop the evil empire doing the treble? And it was almost universal in terms of Fred. And Fred's such a conundrum, man. The guy either drops in a 0 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. And unfortunately, it could go literally any way in terms of which of those out of 10s that you get with Fred, right? It literally could be either of the two, which is frustrating as hell as a fan, trying to figure out what sort of player you're going to get. And I can imagine it's equally as frustrating being his manager, trying to work out, can you rely upon him? Now, I would say ahead of that game with City, I think Fred not only has to be an option, but probably is the option. And I think you would expect Manchester United to line up with Bruno off the right, Fred in the 10, where he can sort of put a little bit of pressure on the back line of City, and then Casemiro and Eriksen for their experience and talent in the centre of the pitch. And it's almost an irrelevance talking about today's fixture, because everything that matters is all on next week. Nothing that we can talk about comes close to being anywhere like how important next week is going to be. And I loved Ten Hag's speech at the end, and I loved the sort of the heart and the passion that he put into it. I thought that was nice to see, and it was nice to sort of hear him speaking so passionately about what he wants to see from the players next week. And I go into that game thinking he's going to come up with a game plan that can let us do this. Now, whether or not it'll be successful, who the hell knows, right? You're dealing with some serious opposition in that Manchester City side next week. So it's going to be a real interesting one to figure out whether or not we get the job done. And it's going to be tough. No way around it. I wonder how many players we saw today for the last time. Wout Weghorst's quote, if it's a true quote, and I've been done before, so it might not be. He said he'd love to stick around at Manchester United, but Casemiro's just offered to drop him back off at Burnley. I love that. But I think there's some truth in that, in all honesty. And I think there's probably a lot of fans who would do the same. But have we seen the last of Harry Maguire? Have we seen the last of Wout Weghorst? Have we seen the last of Anthony Martial? Have we seen the last of Scott McTominay? Have we seen the last of Jadon Sancho, who gets a goal and puts in a shift where he's actually put some pressure on people today and put in a bit of a good account of himself? There's some players there that will not play for Manchester United again. I think Maguire seems to me that the one that's the absolute top of that list. I think there's a very strong chance that you're not going to see Harry Maguire again, partially because his status is international, partially because his status within the club no longer aligns with the status of when he was signed, or the fact that he became club captain somehow. So I think that for those reasons, it makes sense for Harry Maguire, and he's probably still a sellable asset. Ditto Scott McTominay. Ditto Anthony Martial. Probably not quite as much would I expect him to go for. Obviously, Wout was only on loan, but it will be interesting to see, and I'm sure because of the question marks we have over the ownership, there's probably so many variables that Ten Hag is dealing with at the moment that it must be difficult for him to be able to get any sort of straight answer out of who's anybody at the board. They must be working on plan A is nothing's changed. Plan B is lottery winner weekend. Plan C is, have you still got Wout Weghorst's number? And it literally could be anything in between. You could line this up like it literally goes to anywhere in between all of those lines, and all of those are potentially valid scenarios that we could have for the summer where we're trying to find our new recruits. And as the final game of the Premier League season is closed, I think it's probably worth at least quickly reflecting on what we've done and what we've achieved this season. You really have to go back to when Ten Hag was appointed and look at what the expectations were then. And top four on a trophy would have been quite high up on even the giddiest of expectations as like the most that you could see this team achieve. And for how much Arsenal are touching themselves, I think Arsenal have won 33 matches of football this season. United have won 41. We pick up a trophy. We both qualify for the Champions League. So what? Yeah? So what? You finished a place above us. Everyone was talking up this Liverpool team to be one of the greatest of all time last summer. They genuinely was. Regardless of what's happened this season, they genuinely was. People were genuinely making the argument that the Liverpool team that came second last year, that didn't win the Champions League, and that won the two trophies that Manchester United might win this season, should be considered one of the greatest Premier League sides ever. Not as an era, as in that side right there. The one that did not win the league and didn't win the Champions League. And they were saying that after they didn't win those things. Not when they were still capable of winning those things, like City are going for a treble now. You're going to expect them to do 2 or 3 out of those 3. I think we'll all be honest with ourselves. This isn't like when Liverpool was just before the end of the season or just before they was in the Champions League. No, this is afterwards, when we know what they won. People were still talking up this Liverpool team like one of the greatest of all time. Now, interesting their result today as well. I don't think they'll be as bad next year. I think they'll probably be a contender for inside the top 4 unless they've really shit the bed. But I don't think that's likely. I think they'll be there or thereabouts. I think United really depends on who our owners are going to be. I don't think Arsenal will be there. I think Newcastle will be there or thereabouts. City are a tap-in. We're not even taking bets on that. Ivan Toney might be, but no one else is. Unless they're sanctioned by the league. And that's another massive decision that has to happen over the summer. Potentially equally as big as what happens with United. Because if the Premier League finds them guilty, it's going to have to sanction them to a severe degree. And if the Premier League is unable to bring justice to Manchester City, then it makes a mockery of itself. And basically says, if you're loaded enough, you can get away with anything. So there's a massive, massive responsibility on everybody's front that the Premier League get this investigation and these sanctions right. And the interesting thing is, Manchester City aren't looking at this and saying, hey, we didn't do that shit. They're saying, hey, the guy investigating it's an Arsenal fan. The fuck sort of relevance is that? They're delaying, they're stalling, they're acting like they're already guilty as far as I'm concerned. So it remains to be seen what the Premier League do. But again, that's an interesting thing, because if they get stripped, and it happened to Juventus, it has happened in football before where clubs can get stripped. Very, very interesting to see how this one plays out, and obviously we're going to have to see how it does, but there's some big moves going to happen this summer, and Manchester is at the centre of a lot of them. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bank holiday tomorrow, innit? For those who observe. And a bit of a week worth of build-up towards a derby. See you then.